Hey gang, using the promo code MTGMudsta, one word, all caps, will get you 10% off orders of $10 or more at Flipside Gaming, Original Magic Art, and orders of singles at Multizone. If they don't have what you're looking for, you could check out TCG Player and use my affiliate link to help support the channel. Looking for a way to bling out your deck and not spend a fortune? Alter Sleeves can help with that, and you can help with the channel at the same time by using my affiliate link. Or, if you're looking to join the Goblin Gang, you can always support me through Patreon. Hey gang, just so you know, Flipside Gaming is doing a giveaway for a Kaldheim Draft Booster Box. By placing an order with my Flipside Gaming promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, you'll be entered to win. Alternatively, you can send a stamped, self-addressed envelope or postcard to Flipside Gaming to the address below. The contest will run from January 25th until February 8th. Only one entry per household, so good luck, and let me know what you get if you win. Alrighty, we've got another game filmed at Platinum Star Games back when I lived in New Jersey. Please note, I don't live in New Jersey anymore, I've moved back to Canada. Today's game has Devin playing Ramos, keeping an island, a plains, Simic Manipulator, Miles Area, Simic Ascendancy, and Sage of Fables. John is back with his Atraxa deck, keeping a plains, a Blighted Woodland, Thallid Shelldweller, Perilous Forays, Seed Spark, and a doubling season. Unfortunately, wherever there's John, there is a Steve, and he's playing Vorel, keeping Nissa Vital Force, Scavenging Ooze, Island, Altar of Dementia, Life's Legacy, Forest, and an Opal Palace. New to the channel is Kyle, playing his Ishkanah deck, keeping a Stinkweed Imp, Archetype of Finality, Second Harvest, Penumbra Spider, a Forest, and 2 Swamps. Steve wins the die roll and starts us off. Steve draws and plays an island. Kyle plays a swamp. Devin plays what I think is a tap Dimir Guildgate. John plays an Evolving Wilds and sacrifices it, passing to Steve as he searches. Steve plays a forest for turn, and then casts his Scavenging Ooze and passes. Kyle plays a forest and passes. Devin plays a plains for turn. John draws and plays a plains. He casts a Thallid Shelldweller and passes. Steve plays an Opal Palace, and then pays 2 mana for his Swiftfoot Boots. He goes to combat, swinging the Ooze at Devin for 2, and then passes to Kyle. Kyle plays a forest for turn, and pays 3 mana for a Stinkweed Imp, passing. Devin plays an island, and then taps 3 for a Simic Manipulator. He passes to John. John untaps and gets to put a Spore counter onto his Thallid during his upkeep. He then draws for turn. We see him playing a tap Seaside Citadel, and he passes to Steve. Steve's turn is over quite quickly as he has no land to play, and instead casts his commander before passing to Kyle. Kyle drops another forest and pays 4 mana for Penumbrum Spider, and then passes to Devin. Devin draws and plays an island for turn. He casts a Sage of Fables, who enters and triggers the Manipulator's Evolve mechanic. This lets Devin put a +1/+1 counter onto it, and he then passes to John. John untaps and adds another counter to his Thallid. He plays a swamp for turn, and then just passes back to Steve. Steve draws, but can't find that 4th land. He equips Vorel with the Swiftfoot Boots, and then plays a Gyre Sage, passing. Kyle plays an Overgrown Tomb for turn, and has it come into play untapped, and takes 2. He then takes this as a chance to bring out Yeva, Nature's Herald, and he goes to combat. He hits Steve for 1 with the Stinkweed Imp, and passes. Devin draws, and plays the card he drew, a tapped Gruul Guildgate. He then activates his Simic Manipulator and removes the +1/+1 counter from it to steal Steve's Gyre Sage. With nothing else, he passes. John uptakes his Spore counters on his Thallid, draws, and plays a forest in his main phase. He then taps enough for a Sporloth Ancient, and the theme of John's deck is becoming clearer and clearer. Steve draws, and is surprised as I am that he's not finding more lands. He casts Ishkanah, who enters and distributes 2 +1/+1 counters among his creatures. He puts 1 onto Vorel and 1 into the ooze. This now lets Steve tap them for mana. John has been trying to pick a fight with him all turn, but Steve isn't buying it and passes. Kyle plays a swamp and then pays 5 mana for Liliana, Death's Majesty. He upticks her by 1, making a 2/2 black zombie token, and then mills himself for his top 2 cards. He hits a Sentinel Spider and a Jungle Hollow. Moving to combat, John then takes 1 from the Stinkweed Imp this time around, and Kyle passes. Devin draws and plays a swamp. He taps out entirely for Ramos, and gets some evolve triggers, putting a +1/+1 counter onto those creatures as the dragon enters. He's then able to tap the Gyre Sage for 1 green, and uses that for Hardened Scales. The Scales in turn adds a counter to Ramos, and Devin sadly realizes the Sage of Fables doesn't have evolve and removes a counter from it. He then passes to John. John also gets to add counters on his turn, but sadly Spore counters are not the same as +1/+1 counters. He plays a Blighted Woodlands for turn, and taps a blue, a green, a black, and a white to cast Atraxa in his main phase. He then passes, and at the end of turn, responding to Atraxa's trigger, Steve taps Vorel to make a green, and activates his Scavenging Ooze. He exiles Kyle's Sentinel Spider, giving the ooze a +1/+1 counter and gaining 1 life. John then adds another Spore counter onto his creatures, and takes pity on Steve, giving his ooze another +1/+1 counter thanks to the Proliferate. Steve draws and taps 2 lands as well as his ooze to help cast Nissa, Voice of Zendikar. He downticks her when she resolves, adding a +1/+1 counter to each of his creatures. Steve then taps Ishkanah and an island, paying 2 mana to cast an Altar of Dementia, and passing to Kyle. Kyle untaps and plays a forest. He upticks Liliana again to make another token, and mills himself for 2 more cards. Moving to combat, he swings the Stinkweed Imp at Devin. Before moving to damage though, Devin activates the Manipulator again. This lets him steal Kyle's Imp, and with nothing else, Kyle then passes to Devin. Devin draws and plays a Mountain. He casts Simic Ascendancy in his main phase, and Ramos gets 2 +1/+1 counters, but sadly this happens before the enchantment resolves. Adding more +1/+1 counters to the evolved creatures, and adding 3 more counters to Ramos because of her colors. This has the Ascendancy gaining counters, and Devin then goes to combat. He swings his commander at Kyle, who has the highest life total. This triggers Dethrone that Ramos has gained because of Marquesa being out, and Kyle then takes 13 commander damage. Moving to Devin's second main phase, he removes 5 +1/+1 counters from Ramos to make 2 of each color of mana. He uses that mana to cast his own copy of Vorel, and also Mael's Aria. This has Ramos gaining 5 more +1/+1 counters, which means that the Ascendancy also gains 5 counters. Devin then uses some of the remaining floating mana to activate the Sage of Fables, removing counters from Ramos to draw 2 cards. He then passes to John. John untaps and draws. He taps 5 to cast a Dumbly Season, which Devin admires from a distance. John then passes, and adds counters to some of the stuff on the board thanks to Atraxa's free Proliferate, because he's worried Devin is getting out of hand. Steve draws and finally finds his 4th land. He plays a forest, and then downticks Nissa for her last counter, to pump his board further by +1/+1 counters. He then activates Vorel, doubling the counters on Scavenging Ooze, and with his remaining mana, casts Life's Legacy, sacrificing the ooze as part of the cost, and then drawing 8 cards. Steve then passes, and has to discard down to 7. Kyle draws in his main phase and downticks Liliana by 7 to wipe the board of all non-zombie creatures. With the ability on the stack, Devin responds by removing 5 counters from Ramos to make 2 of each color of mana. He uses the 2 green and the 2 blue, plus 2 of whatever to add a +1/+1 counter to Marquesa, and 1 to Vorel, thanks to the Simic Ascendancy's ability. This adds 2 counters instead of 1 because of the Hardened Scale, and Devin gets to add 4 more counters to his Ascendancy. Then, using his 4 floating mana that still remains, removes a counter from Vorel and one from Atraxa to draw a card thanks to the Sage of Fables. The board is then wiped of everything except for Kyle's Zombies token, but most of Devon's stuff will be rejoining the table at the end of turn because of Marquesa's delayed return trigger for creatures with +1/+1 counters on them. Kyle then casts a second Harvest, doubling his tokens, and once he's done that, plays out Beastmaster's Ascension. He then goes to combat and swings what tokens he can at Devon, and adds 2 counters to his Ascension. Devon then takes the hit for 4. Unfortunately, that's all Kyle can do, and at the end of turn, Devon returns all of the creatures he'd lost that had a +1/+1 counter. This means everything comes back, and he gets to steal back the Gyre Sage from Steve because Marquesa doesn't care who owns the card, just that it died when Devon controlled it with a +1/+1 counter. They all come in, and the evolved creatures see the other ones coming in at the same time, triggering their evolve abilities. They get +1/+1 counters, and an additional one thanks to the Hardened Scales. This is enough to push Devon's Simic Ascendancy up to what's needed to win, and we move to his turn, and he wins on his upkeep once the table all admits to not having a way to deal with the enchantment. Game review time. Unfortunately, I don't think Kyle was aware that creatures were brought back with Marquesa's ability if they had a +1/+1 counter on it, because that last turn where he down-ticked Liliana probably wasn't the best. That being said, if he'd followed up by playing Bojuka Bog to exile Devon's graveyard, that probably would have dealt with the creatures, but the real problem was the Simic Ascendancy. Considering how many counters Devon gained on his turn, and the fact that it went around the table without anyone having a way to deal with it, pretty much closed the game out for Devon, I think. Not only that though, I think there were a couple triggers missed because of Hardened Scales adding more counters to creatures and the Simic Ascendancy not getting them. Unfortunately, things like that can slip through the cracks when you're having fun and talking with everyone at the table, and thankfully missing a few of them didn't really affect Devon's winning the game anyway. John's conversion of his original Atraxa Lux Cannon deck to a Thallid deck was probably a step down. I know people had suggested it to him as a meme, but it worked really well when he was able to do it, and I kinda wish he brought it back. I think the most surprising thing in this game was the fact that Steve wasn't really able to do very much. He had a great hand initially, and Scavenging Ooze being able to disrupt graveyards was fantastic, the Swiftfoot Boots being able to give Vorel haste was fantastic, but lack of lands really hindered him. It's a real shame because he runs 37 lands and a bunch of ramp spells, but just didn't see any of them. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.